How does Judaism understand God? What is our response to Israel? And what is our responsibility towards nature? Are three questions out of many questions which have the same answer. It's complicated. It's complicated is not a satisfactory answer for many people today. And I appreciate that as a rabbi. People want very easy, quick answers. Not all people, obviously, but many people. They want simplistic slogans. They want to summarize conflict, theology, morality in very simple, quick slogans. Because when people want to know something, they don't necessarily have time for a 3-hour response from Rabbi Neil saying, well, this source says this and this source says that, and it's complicated. People want to know what something is, especially how Judaism responds to things. And that can be very difficult because Judaism has never spoken in a monolithic voice about anything. Although there have been people throughout Jewish history who've said, we hold the truth, and we are the ones who say what Judaism is, there have always been differing movements in Judaism that have said, but we think this, actually, and we think something else. That is the strength of Judaism, and I would say certainly why Judaism has continued throughout millennia of difficult situations, of anti-Semitism in particular, of hatred, because we have kept going, playing off each other, intellectually growing off each other, debating each other. One room, two Jews, three opinions doesn't mean that they sit together and just say, but this is what I think and we're done. We debate, we learn, we grow. So it's actually very difficult as a contemporary Reform rabbi when people want to know an answer to a question, and people do email me questions and I respond with, it's complicated. Because then the natural tendency is just to go online and say, you know what, I can get a much quicker answer from Google. That's true, but a more in-depth answer, a more challenging answer, and hopefully a more satisfying answer takes longer. And I mention that because particularly of tomorrow's session. I've been working on a book for a long time, a very long time. And it's a book about Judaism and the environment. And the entire premise of this book is that Jewish understanding of the environment is way too simplistic. What is our responsibility towards nature? That's tomorrow's session. And we can turn around very easily and quote the story of Noah and say Noah saved differing kinds of animals and all kinds of animals. And so our responsibility is to therefore take care of all nature. Noah saves 2 of every unclean animal and 7 of every clean animal. Noah is told to distinguish between them, that there are some that are more functionally useful for a Jewish audience, and the clean animal particularly for food or for sacrifice. There may be a difference in terms of functionality. At the same time, at the end of the day, Noah saves them all. So therefore, we have a responsibility to save all of nature. Well, that's all well and good, but none of us actually truly believes that. And the reason none of us really believes that is because if we did, we would have to bring an end to human society. Because our society clashes with the concept of the total preservation of nature. It has to by necessity. Because as we grow, we use more resources, and those resources affect the habitats of other creatures. They change how biomes work. We have become a geological force in the world. And so therefore everything we do, including purchasing the device on which you are watching this message, has a negative impact on the world around us. So we could say, well, our responsibility is just to reduce our impact. Okay, that's fair enough. So our responsibility to nature is to tread as lightly as possible. Okay, but what's the balance? There's a very challenging, very interesting text from Talmud, Tractate Ta'anit 22a. Some of the good things which Rav Huna used to do, says Talmud. Every Shabbat evening, he would send a messenger to the market, just before Shabbat that is. The messenger would buy up all the perishable vegetables which the gardeners had been unable to sell, and these would then be thrown into the river. Surely he should give them to the poor, Talmud asks. No, comes the answer. They would then get used to getting it free and wouldn't come to buy it in the future. Perhaps then, Talmud asks, he should feed them to the animals. And it seems that Rav Huna holds it's not permissible to feed food that's fit for human consumption to animals. Perhaps then Talmud asks he shouldn't have bought them at all. And it replies no, because if nobody would pay them, then the gardeners would produce less in the future. This is a really challenging text, because our responsibility toward nature is also a responsibility toward ourselves, and that includes economics. The responsibility toward the market, because the market keeps people alive, or at least a healthy functioning market should do that. So why does Rav Huna's messenger throw all this perishable food that isn't going to be sold on Shabbat, so it's going to go off? Why does he throw it in the river? Why not give it to the poor? Because when they're no longer poor, they may turn around and say, I'm not buying it anymore. I can just wait for this guy before Shabbat. And if that happens, then the farmers who are selling the produce suddenly have no income and they become poor. So perhaps feed it to the animals. Well, there is a question here, and Talmud suggests maybe it's because he believes that there's a differentiation between human food and animal food. Maybe he should just leave it alone. Maybe he should just not buy it at all and let the market take care of it. And the reply is no, because if nobody bought them, then the farmers wouldn't produce them in advance of Shabbat. And then the market would close down essentially, and then people wouldn't be able to have their food, and then they would struggle. So this leads us to, it's complicated. It's complicated. Our responsibility toward nature is actually really complicated. And so tomorrow, instead of Torah study in the morning, our Torah study is going to be an extended session in person and online, looking at our responsibility toward nature. And what we're doing is looking through some of the texts that I'm using for my book, and we're having a discussion, and you may help me actually write a chapter of my book by making comments and helping me think of certain things, helping me find the nuance and find the way through the many hundreds of pages of notes that I wrote that have been summarized into a much smaller handout. So I hope that you'll be able to join Cantiliana and the youth choir this evening. I won't be able to be at services because it turns out public schools don't consider Shabbat when they are planning your daughter's school play in which she has a lead role. However, I will be leading the Shabbat morning service, and then afterwards we have our extended Torah study where we'll be looking at our responsibility toward nature and appreciating the complexity of the question. For me, being a Reform Jew and being a Reform rabbi is all about nuance. It's all about complexity. It's all about saying yes, but, or yes, and. Judaism does say this, and it also says this, and it also says this. If we are to make a positive change in the world, I believe we have to move beyond simplistic slogans, simplistic notions. I believe that peacemaking, I believe that reconciliation, I believe that tikkun olam is found in complexity. It's found in compromise, in learning from each other, in growing and slowly developing human society. And I believe the same is true of Jewish environmentalism, that the only way that we can become a much more sustainable community is to go beyond simplistic phrases and to explore what our relationship to nature actually is. So please join Cantiliana and the youth choir this evening, and please join me tomorrow morning and also tomorrow afternoon immediately after the service. Bring a bag lunch and we'll have lunch together and then we'll study together. I hope that you'll join us to explore this real complexity, this really important topic, so that you also can appreciate it's complicated. I wish you Shabbat Shalom.